Welcome to my channel Limelight Leaks. Please share and subscribe, and hit the bell icon for latest updates. To millions of car lovers, Stacey David was the creative guy behind TV shows like Trucks and Stacey David's GearZ. He would cut up classic hot rods, bend metal into crazy off-road trucks, or fix up old muscle cars. Stacey always seemed like someone who was in control, focused, and super creative. Fans thought his personal garage would be the same way. Most people imagine it as a perfect, high-tech place filled with bright workbenches, loud engines, and finished cars that looked amazing. But when a small camera crew got rare access to Stacey's private workspace for what was supposed to be a behind-the-scenes feature, they were shocked. What they found was not a showroom. It was a time capsule. The lighting was dim and uneven. Some corners were covered in dust, so thick it hid the shapes of old parts. A dozen or more covered vehicles filled the space, each quietly getting older. Above, chains hung from an unused engine lift. Old wiring plans were pinned to yellow corkboards. Instead of a man in motion, it looked like someone had hit pause on a life mid-sentence. At the heart of it all, Stacey stood quietly, not defensive or bragging, just real. He pointed toward the mess and simply said, "Yeah, it gets like this when the cameras stop." It wasn't that the garage had fallen apart. It had simply stopped moving. This wasn't the image the public had built up over years of fancy production lighting and fast-paced editing. This was something much more honest, a creative space caught between moving forward and memories. What shocked the crew wasn't the dust or the mess. It was the story the room was trying to tell. A story of being burned out, of dreams put off, of a man who once ran at full speed, now stuck in neutral. And for the first time, it wasn't just the projects being looked at. It was Stacey himself. Most garages show their owner's personality. But Stacey David's wasn't just a reflection. It was a museum of ambition, both completed and given up. As the crew walked deeper into the dim corners of his space, they began to realize this wasn't just a shop. It was a vault of dreams that never happened. Projects that had been set aside, paused mid-creation like frozen moments in time. Every car, every corner seemed to whisper a story. First came the GT40 kit car, its body partially sanded, and its frame sitting awkwardly on jack stands. Stacey had mentioned it briefly years ago during a casual comment in GearZ, but the show never featured it. It had been his dream to build a tribute to the racing legends. Something raw, loud, and brutally fast. But here it sat, half done and forgotten, like a love letter never sent. Next to it was a chopped 1957 Ford Custom. Its back end widened with massive tires mounted, but no engine in sight. The metalwork was clean, but clearly abandoned mid-process. A build this wild would have been a hit on TV. So why was it hidden? Why had Stacey never even teased it online? Then there was the unfinished rock crawler. Massive shock absorber parts lay scattered on the floor. A high-movement tube frame peeked from beneath a dirty cover. It looked like something Mad Max would drive. If only it had ever been finished. Stacey had clearly put hours into it until suddenly he hadn't. The crew expected mess. What they didn't expect were plans, drawings, and handwritten notes taped to parts like grave markers. In one corner was a dusty whiteboard with the words, "Torque over timing." Remember this, written in red marker, faded by years. The space was filled not with failure, but with pause, as if the man who created it all just got up one day and didn't come back. And maybe that's exactly what happened. In most garages, tools are signs of life. Grease on the wrenches, sockets left mid-job, grinders warm from use. But here in Stacey David's private garage, the tools sat still, silent, like relics from another time. As the camera crew took slow steps through the space, their attention shifted from the vehicles to the objects around them, clues to a craftsman's stopped rhythm. There was a vintage snap-on toolbox shoved into the corner. Its once red finish dulled to dark red with age. Some drawers were partially open, showing unopened packages of special bits and tools that had clearly been ordered for a purpose, but never used. Dust had gathered in the grooves of socket trays. A rusted Allen key set lay untouched beside a grease gun that hadn't been moved in years. And then came the workbench, Stacey's command center. It was surrounded by trophies from a previous life. A half-assembled carburetor, an untouched nitro system, boxes of custom parts with yellowed shipping labels dating back 5, 6, even 8 years. The work surface told a story of a project stopped. Sticky notes still stuck to tool handles with written reminders like fit before weld and get bracket from Larry. A cracked coffee mug sat beside a sealed bottle of Loctite, and beneath the bench, a bin labeled final fittings, do not touch. One crew member whispered, "It's like he walked out and never came back." The air hung heavy, not with oil fumes, but with memory. This wasn't just dust. It was emotional leftover, the kind that forms when passion meets pressure and runs out of steam. These were the tools that once built icons, but now they rested like forgotten swords after a war. No one said it out loud, but they all felt it. Stacey wasn't just taking a break. He had stepped away from a part of himself. It was covered in a tarp, so worn it looked more like burlap. Tucked behind the shelved GT40 and next to a stack of parts labeled experimental, the outline was unmistakable. Massive, squared off, scary, and once uncovered, the crew understood why this particular project had never seen the light of TV. Beneath the tarp was a Dodge truck chassis, bare metal, but brutally designed. Mounted on top were twin superchargers stacked on a heavily modified 528 cubic inch Hemi. Nitrous lines snaked down into a custom manifold, and a set of axles oversized even by rock crawling standards connected to prototype shock absorbers that looked almost military. But the scariest part, it wasn't finished. Yet, every part of it gave off danger. Stacey had written the words Project Redacted in Sharpie on a makeshift sign taped to the grill. When the crew asked, he laughed nervously and said, "That's the one that got me the phone call." According to him, the network had gotten wind of the build during early planning for an early season of GearZ. When they saw his mock-up and engineering notes, they told him very clearly, cool doesn't mean dangerous. The build was deemed too risky, too aggressive, too uncontrollable for a public figure to promote on national television. They didn't want Stacey seen as reckless. They wanted safe, sellable. So, they shut it down. Rather than take apart the truck, Stacey buried it. He could have fought back. He could have filmed it anyway. But instead, he shelved the project. And something in him seemed to crack. From that point on, his builds got tamer, his screen time shorter, his passion. You could feel it dimming. What rested under that tarp wasn't just a machine. It was a message. The moment when a man who built wild things was told to build safe things instead. And it might have been the exact moment Stacey David began planning his escape from mainstream TV. There's always a moment when the soul of a creator gets tested. For Stacey David, that moment came not with a failure, but with a rejection. According to sources close to the early GearZ production, Stacey had spent months designing Project Redacted, a build meant to push the limits of what could legally and mechanically be driven. But when network executives got hold of the initial sketches and specs, their response wasn't excitement. It was fear. One producer reportedly told him, "Look, we're selling car culture to middle America. If this thing crashes or goes viral for the wrong reason, the lawyers are coming for everyone." Another, even more blunt, said, "We want cool, not chaos." They didn't want rogue welds and twin supercharged monsters. They wanted bolt-on kits, repeatable installs, and friendly builds that sponsors could comfortably put their name on. Stacey didn't take the call well. He wasn't some YouTube shock builder chasing fame. He was a craftsman with vision. And for the first time, that vision was being filtered, censored. It wasn't about safety. It was about image, the networks, the advertisers, the brand they were building around him. But Stacey had never been a brand. He was a builder, a purist. Insiders say that after that call, something shifted. He stopped pitching wild concepts, stopped fighting for the big ideas. His once animated storyboard sessions with the crew became quiet, businesslike. He started coloring inside the lines, one former crew member said, and you could tell it broke something in him. That one denied project might not seem like a big deal to outsiders, but for Stacey David, it was the same as telling Picasso to stop using red. It wasn't just a build, it was his identity. And when that got rejected, it wasn't long before his enthusiasm followed. When most people think of burnout, they imagine someone overworked and underpaid. But Stacey David wasn't either. He had a loyal fan base, creative control on paper, and a platform most builders would kill for. And yet, burnout hit him like a slow, rolling thunderstorm. It didn't happen overnight. At first, it was just the little things. He started showing up later to the shop. The creative meetings grew shorter. His trademark enthusiasm on camera began to look a little rehearsed, even forced. The sparkle was still there, but dimmer. He was tired, not physically, but emotionally, the kind of tired you can't nap away. In a 2022 podcast appearance, Stacey briefly opened up about it. There were days I'd walk past a stalled project and feel nothing, he admitted. That scared me. For a man who once described his garage as his happy place, this was a red flag waving in the dark. And yet, he kept going. Fans noticed that the wild edge of his earlier work had softened. The "how far can we push this" vibe became more what's trending in the market. One longtime viewer commented, "He used to build like he was racing a clock. Now it feels like he's just hitting the clock-in button." Not an insult, just observation. What many didn't see were the mounting pressures behind the scenes. Sponsors needing product placement, production teams demanding tighter scripts, platforms pushing for shorter run times. Stacey was being boxed in. The same guy who once cut open frame rails just to make a creative drivetrain fit was now editing his creativity for airtime. And it weighed on him because burnout doesn't always look like collapse. Sometimes it looks like silence, like unopened tool drawers, like sketches left unfinished. And for Stacey David, burnout didn't make him quit. It made him vanish slowly, piece by piece, behind the curtain of his own legend. People still ask, why did Stacey leave TV? The truth is, it wasn't one reason. It was every reason. By the time the last few seasons of GearZ aired, viewers could tell something was off. The show was still good, but it lacked the edge, the spark, the Stacey that made it electric. Sponsors were louder than the engines. Edits cut out the emotional beats. Builds were polished, but predictable. It wasn't that Stacey lost his passion. It's that the structure no longer fit the size of his ideas. One insider said he was tired of putting on a show about building cars. He just wanted to build cars again. And that hits harder than it sounds. Over the years, Stacey had watched automotive media shift from hands-on learning to influencer culture, from soulful storytelling to 10-minute content for clicks. He wasn't bitter, but he wasn't interested in playing that game. He didn't want to be a meme. He wanted to be a mentor. There were also rumors that Stacey clashed quietly with network producers over the direction of the show. He wanted deeper dives into technique. They wanted punchier reveals. He wanted full episodes dedicated to obscure tools and philosophies. They wanted a build a car in 24 minutes formula. So he made a choice, slowly, quietly, and without a grand exit. He stepped back from the cameras. He stopped pitching new seasons. No farewell tour. No drama. Just a man deciding to get back to what he loved on his own terms. And in the world of fame chasers and burnout victims, that kind of decision takes guts. Stacey didn't leave TV because he failed. He left because he finally realized something. Real legacy isn't built on screen. It's built in the garage, one bolt at a time. Tucked in the far corner of Stacey David's garage, beneath a heavy canvas cover and layers of untouched dust, sits a project that's never been on TV, never mentioned in interviews, never shown to fans. It's a raw, unfinished hot rod built on an old frame pieced together with a mismatched set of parts from decades past. And to Stacey, it's sacred. It was supposed to be the ultimate tribute, a father-son project he began building with his dad before either of them had careers, families, or health worries. They'd sketch it together in notebooks when Stacey was still a teenager. Stacey even kept a yellowed, folded-up blueprint his father drew. Crude, hand-drawn, full of passion. The car was always meant to be their shared masterpiece. But life happened. Stacey's rise through the industry, the birth of trucks, and later GearZ ate up the time. He kept telling himself he'd get back to it someday. But someday never came. Then his father passed. The loss hit him like a freight train. Friends say Stacey stopped coming to the shop for a while. When he returned, he built faster, harder, but never touched that project again. It was too raw, too personal. One former crew member recalled him saying, "I don't want anyone to help me finish that one. It's not for TV. It's for him." And so the car sat unfinished, a monument to both love and loss. Today, that hot rod is more than metal. It's memory, a reminder that even the most skilled craftsman can be undone by the weight of what they never completed. Stacey often talks about honoring your roots, but this is one root he's never quite dug back into. It's not about mechanics. It's about grief. And that kind of build can't be rushed, sponsored, or scripted. It has to be faced. And that, Stacey admits, has been the hardest project of all. Most garages reflect the builders who work in them. Organized or chaotic, pristine or cluttered. But Stacey David's garage, it's a mirror. One that reflects not just his skills, but his soul. When the crew stepped inside for the first time, cameras off, doors closed, they expected trophies, legendary builds, a personal museum to one of the most respected names in automotive television. Instead, they found something more human. Half-finished projects lined the walls like frozen ideas. Some were ambitious, like a retrofitted Mustang body stretched over a hybrid chassis. Others were humble. An old Datsun pickup he refused to part with. Everywhere you looked, there were signs of both brilliance and burnout. Post-it notes with scribbled part numbers, dust-covered shop manuals, sketches taped above workbenches with "someday" written in the margins. But most telling was the silence. This wasn't the garage of a man chasing content. It was the sanctuary of someone searching for peace. Stacey's tools were laid out, but not freshly used. A cup of cold coffee sat next to a welder. An open book on chassis tuning lay on a bench, untouched for weeks. The space told a story louder than any narration ever could. Here was a man who gave everything to the craft and hit a wall, who built a career out of showing others how to dream big with a wrench, but forgot to finish some of his own dreams along the way. One of the production assistants later said, "That garage wasn't messy. It was honest. It was a place where a man like Stacey could finally feel everything TV doesn't let you feel." And maybe that's the truth about legacy. It isn't what you finish. It's what you leave behind that says the most. Stacey's garage doesn't boast. It reveals. And what it reveals is a man who still believes in the magic of the build, even if some builds remain unfinished. If you're looking for Stacey David on TV these days, you might not find him. But that doesn't mean he's disappeared. Far from it. He's just moved into a different lane. A slower one, a quieter one, but no less meaningful. After stepping back from regular production schedules, Stacey didn't vanish from the car world. Instead, he pivoted. He started hosting smaller self-produced segments, educational deep dives, old school restoration tutorials. Things that didn't need flashy editing or commercial breaks, just passion and purpose. But more than that, he began reconnecting with the why behind it all. He teaches now not in classrooms, but online and in person. He mentors younger builders, speaks at local shows, shows up at events where his name is whispered like a legend, only to shake hands and talk shop like an old friend. He doesn't bring a camera crew. He brings a wrench and a notebook. And yes, he's building again. Friends say Stacey's garage looks different these days, not because it's cleaner or flashier, but because it's moving. He's tackling personal builds at his own pace. Not for views, not for sponsors for him. Including, sources say, finally uncovering that hot rod project he began with his father. Slowly, carefully, with intention. His voice may not boom through TV speakers like it once did, but in the hearts of gearheads everywhere, Stacey David is still very much present. Because in the end, the next chapter of his story isn't about fame or formats. It's about freedom. The kind that only comes when you stop building for others and start building for yourself again. And if that garage was once a graveyard for forgotten dreams, it's now a resurrection site for new ones.